welcome to episode 289 of Late Night Linux, recorded on the 1st of July 2024. I'm Joe, and with me are Phelim.
Anarchy in the UK.
Graham.
I'm still celebrating.
And Will.
Yay!
Can you believe it? 250 seat majority for Labour. No, I'm sticking with 15, which will make me look very silly, I suspect, by the time this goes out and we have a whole new government.
I hope so.
If that's all that happens, then brilliant.
Yeah, and we'll be into the semi-finals of the Euros by then.
Oh, no, don't spoil it.
Football truly will be coming home. Anyway, enough of that nonsense. Let's do some discoveries. Will, IM Hex?
Yeah, a bit of a niche one for a change. If you're looking at decompiled or rather compiled C code and trying to decompile it, you might often use a hex editor. And the standard ones that I have experienced on the Linux desktop have been fine for finding strings and that kind of thing, but a little bit lacking in any deeper level investigations. And this popped into my feed somehow, I suspect via the GitHub trending page, but I can't really remember. And it's a hex editor that has got a really nice GUI and a whole bunch of features that I didn't know were possible, such as color coding data types within a compiled hex file. Like, it knows it. I think you have to teach it a little bit about what the file is, what architecture it's for, and that kind of thing. But it can help you accelerate the decompilation process, but also just help you find stuff really easily with some really nice highlighting. It's got a whole highlighting engine built in, which is way beyond anything I know how to operate, but maybe one day I'll actually learn how to use it. And it's got just loads of really nice features in here, extracting data from hex files and binaries and turning it into something that you can gather a little bit more information from. As far as hex editors go, this is the fullest featured one I've ever seen, and I can't even begin to understand how it works.
It looks amazing, I agree. It makes me want to find a game that I can somehow cheat the number of lives that I have in this, because that's about all I could ever do with them.
Well, yeah, I mean, I installed this, and then when it has an intro wizard and tutorial, you just kind of go, oh yeah, I don't know what I'm doing here at all. Closed it rapidly and uninstalled it.
It's very much the blender of hex editors.
Yes, that's a really good analogy. I think it is. If you're willing to invest a lot of time and energy into it, I think it will pay you back in the long term.
So you haven't actually done anything useful with it yet?
Nothing useful, no. I tried it and I thought, oh man, this is very complicated. Maybe another day.
This is just next level shit, man. Yeah. I will never even begin to understand how this works.
I don't want to.
Hopefully somebody can write in and tell us how to use it.
Phelim, Samba VFS Shadow Copy 2.
I've had a long-running ZFS project in work. It runs on Samba servers, and the need for a out-of-time zone, out-of-English language server was required. And for a very long time, on the very long finger of I'll get to that some point in the future, was to enable the ability for people to restore stuff themselves rather than somebody from IT to do it through the ZFS snapshot directories. And Windows already has a thing built in called Shadow Copy. And this provides a interface to, well, it doesn't have to be ZFS, could be Butterfs, whatever. Anything that has snapshots, it can then provide a link to their snapshots and then allow the Windows user a way to get to them through the standard restore file button on a right click of a directory that you can do in Windows. And it does exactly what it says. And I have it linked up now to ZFS snapshots done by Sanoid, by Jim Salter. And yeah, works really well. Nice and easy. And it's a great way for self-service restores of files.
Can you explain a use case to me in smaller words? Is it primarily around getting backups out?
Yeah, essentially. So imagine you have an Excel sheet and people keep accidentally either overwriting it or writing the wrong copy of the file on top of it or whatever, and then going, oh my God, I've totally trashed a day's work. Can I get a copy of that back? And because running automatic snapshots every 15 minutes, then yeah, they can just now grab it themselves.
Huh.
And it just appears like a pop open Explorer window of the directory, and they can choose the files they want and cherry pick them out.
Wow. That must save an enormous amount of like help desk time.
Yeah, and it is a pain in the arse to get, because oftentimes I find Windows users will like have massive directory depth and horrific file names that when you're trying to recover it on a bash prompt from a server, you're like, oh dear God, and you're trying to escape all sorts of stuff. And then you obviously have to get into the snapshot directory, which is exactly as awful, but then there's a timestamp version of it, and could be about 5 of them. And I know Jim has written a thing called Findoid, which can help you find all the different versions of it, but still you have to go to the effort of finding that. And the reason it was an international language, a non-European like character set. So, I mean, all bets are off there. I wasn't going to be looking at different characters going, is that the same as that one? I have no clue. So I just thought better that people could self-serve and do it that way.
Nice.
And so what, does it give them a proper GUI then to see the various snapshot times and whatnot?
Yeah, they literally open a file share in Windows Explorer, the file level browser, and then they can just say you're inside, I don't know, worksheets directory, and you fuck up a whole lot of files. Just go one directory above, right click on the directory, and then you'll see there's a menu on Windows Explorer's right click menu that says restore files. And you just click that. And then you get a drop-down list of all the different snapshots that are available. Now, the hardest part of this was actually configuring a regex to actually match the structure of the snapshots that Sanoid builds. But depending on whatever tool, like there's not just Sanoid, there's other ones too. You just need to get the structure of that correct, and then you're done.
So it's a little bit of work up front, but it saves a lot of work down the line, it sounds like.
It's like 5 lines of config. I should have done it ages ago, but it was just one of those things of needs to be tested, need to look at it right now. That wasn't the priority. And as usual, there was always something else in the queue.
Right. This sounds extremely useful then.
Yeah, dead simple.
Well, I don't have a discovery, but thankfully, Pascal wrote in with one. I've been using AntennaPod for a while, and it's the best podcast app hands down. However, I find the synchronization using Gpodder, self-hosted, Nextcloud or Cloud, very lame and inconsistent. This led me into a rabbit hole on how to listen to my AntennaPod podcasts on a day-to-day workstation with nice speakers and everything. Since Google has deprecated casting from mobile apps to receive apps, and DLNA using VLC or Kodi is not showing in AntennaPod casts, I thought, why don't I stream the Bluetooth audio? It turns out this is baked into Pipewire but can also be done with Pulse Audio. In KDE, I just need to turn on Bluetooth, connect the phone to the Linux PC, accept the notification, and you're off to the races. And so I read this and I thought, what? No. But then I opened up Bluetooth settings on my phone, went onto my desktop machine, Bluetooth settings, searched for devices, sure enough, Pixel 7, connected to it, and then I could play any audio from my phone through the speakers on my desktop PC. And so I can't believe that I've never thought to try this before, but yeah, you can just connect the phone to a Linux desktop and play podcasts or whatever it is from that. And I even tried this with an iPad, and sure enough, it works with that as well. And then I thought, I wonder if I could connect Bluetooth headphones to that Linux machine. And sure enough, it works. So I was doing Bluetooth from the phone to the Ubuntu machine, and then back out to my Bluetooth headphones.
Really?
Yeah.
I don't think I can do multiple Bluetooths from my dongle. What version of Bluetooth is it? Do you know?
Fuck knows. This is just my NAS machine, which is connected to my TV. It's just running Ubuntu 22.04, I think, at the moment.
But do you know what Bluetooth type of gear it has, hardware-wise?
It's just whatever's built into the motherboard.
I didn't think it could do multiples. Fair enough.
I didn't think it could either.
I mean, I'm just thankful when it fucking connects my headset and actually plays music through them without me having to switch source off and then on again, but okay.
Well, so am I, yeah. But what this means is that you could have your phone connected and play a podcast, and then, I don't know, they mentioned a YouTube video that you could then pause the podcast, search for the YouTube video, watch a bit of that, whatever. Or if you've got nice speakers connected to your PC, you come home listening to a podcast, connect it to the PC, and carry on listening seamlessly, and your phone keeps the progress and everything. You don't have to worry about syncing between devices. So I think Pascal's onto something here. This is genius.
This does sound brilliant. It's exactly the kind of thing I was talking about in the last episode when we were saying why we use Linux. You can do this in Linux. Well, we didn't know you could do this, but the fact that you can do it is amazing.
Who knows other things we don't know?
Yeah.
I'm tempted to try it on macOS and see if it works there.
Don't. No, let's assume that it doesn't and we're better than
let's assume that we're the best. Yeah, because we can do this. But I thought I was going to have to install KDE, but I thought I'm going to give this a go with XFCE and let's see. And sure enough, it worked. So if it works in XFCE, it's bound to work in GNOME and Plasma and stuff.
How's GTK 5 coming on?
How's GTK 4 coming along, I think you mean. Okay, this episode is sponsored by people who support us with PayPal and Patreon. Go to latenightlinux.com/support for details of how you can support us too. Patreon supporters have the option to listen to episodes without ads like this. And it's not just this show. There's 2.5 admins about system administration, Linux Matters for upbeat, family-friendly adventures, Linux After Dark for silly challenges and philosophical debates, Linux Dev Time about developing with and for Linux, Hybrid Cloud Show for everything public and private cloud, and Ask the Hosts for off-topic questions from you. You can even get some episodes a bit early. We've got a lot going on, and it's only possible because of the people who support us. So, if you like what we do and can afford it, it would be great if you could support us too at latenightlinux.com/support. Graham, Inc.
Okay, so I'm going to have to go down a retro gaming rabbit hole with this. But back in the 80s, one of my favourite types of game to play was a text adventure or an interactive fiction game. Colossal Cave is perhaps the most famous, then followed by Zork, where you basically get a text description of some location and the items in that location, and you use kind of verb nouns like get, book, to build an inventory and operate on objects in that environment, all through text, all through typing. And the syntax those games used were very simple in the beginning, but then companies like Infocom and Magnetic Scrolls in the UK started to make those prompts and the capabilities in those prompts really smart. And people like Douglas Adams even worked with Infocom to create versions of Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy and a new game as well in interactive fiction. And I've always loved them. I still play them. They're a good thing to play and relax without wasting too much time on the screen. And in fact, there's still, as I guess you could imagine, there is still a thriving community of people who play interactive fiction games and also develop their own interactive fiction games. A lot of them are available for free. There's a site called IMDb that hosts them all. There's a competition for every year for the best new interactive fiction game.
INDB, that is. Not to be confused with IMDb.
Yeah, sorry, that was my fault. And so the way that those games are written, Infocom was the biggest creator, the best of those in the 80s. Famously, they made some amazing games, and they used like a virtual machine for running the same game on lots of different hardware. So like Tandy, Commodore 64, Amigas, STs and PCs and Macs, they all ran exactly the same game with just an interpreter. And the games were written for this interpreter using a language called Inform. A long time ago, Inform was reverse engineered. In fact, the original code to it was released open source when somebody found the original disks. And so people have been developing interactive fiction games with Inform, and there's now like this wonderful Inform IDE. However, it's quite complicated. It's more like programming and needs a lot of planning. So, sorry, TLDR, Inc. is a modern narrative scripting engine for writing interactive fiction games in Markdown. It's not even really programming. It's basically a way of writing a book where you can add really quite complicated interactive elements to your story in the same way as an interactive fiction works. It's open source. There have been real games that have been produced with Inc. Not just interactive fiction. It's also been used to drive graphical games. This is at the heart of the kind of text interaction of the games. And I've played with it a little bit. I wrote an Inform game like for a tutorial years ago and really enjoyed it. It's relaxing, but Inc. looks like a genuine kind of next generation interactive fiction for old people to get nostalgic about.
It's not going to be as good as the one that Mark from Linux Matters wrote in Bash, though, is it?
No.
That's so cool. And I find it really funny that that's the second virtual machine that I've heard of that does that. Like the Scum guys used to do the Scum VM.
Yeah.
It's bizarre. There's so many different machines. That was this the best way to deal with it. Funny. And then Java came along and Python. So,
yeah.
Weird.
It's amazing that, they created the interpreter for those VMs that still ran on that hardware. And I can kind of understand it with text, but yeah, Scum took that to a whole new level with the graphical capabilities.
Do you remember we looked at really old machines on a video conference a while back? And I had my Nokia 770.
Oh my God,
early tablet. That had a Scum VM client on it. And I used to play, well, in particular, the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy game on there. They just so immersive. I know it's very old school and it reminds me of computer games as a kid and that kind of thing. But nevertheless, there's something very special about those games. And being able to create new ones is really quite exciting.
I remember there's one that I got that I think it was on the BBC. And oh my God, you started off in, I don't know, a mine shaft or something like that. And you walked down a mine shaft and you got bitten by a fucking snake. Because apparently you had to light lantern. I didn't know I had a fucking lantern to start with. Why would I come up with just randomly lighting a lantern?
Infocom did some brilliant ones. There was one called Deadline, which was a crime. It's like an Agatha Christie in the house. And every move, the clock ticked forward. And so you had to play it multiple times as you tried to work out what was happening and who was responsible. And then another favourite one of mine was called Station Fall, which was set on a space station and you find yourself all alone. On the space station, there's like a hot cup of coffee on a desk. So the place has been abandoned at last minute and then there's strange sounds somewhere in the mechanism. That one even had an AI-driven robot that would follow you around. It was really good.
Well, fuck, I'm not playing that. That sounds terrifying. It's like that game that you got me to buy, the Alien Isolation thing.
Oh, yeah.
I haven't got past 5 minutes. I shite myself every time I tried to play it.
Nothing happens in the first hour of that.
I don't care. I'm still shitting myself walking from one side of a room to another.
Let's do some feedback then. Stuart says, I was curious which open source tools you guys use to keep track of tasks and projects that you're working on. I've gone through so many fad apps that sell out on AI features. I've used services that claim to be a life OS, Notion, Evernote, etc. I've used free services from big corps like OneNote, Google Keep, etc. They're all rubbish and mess with formatting and try to be clever and apply autocorrect to things that don't actually need to be corrected, and so on. Right now, I've literally resorted to editing a plain text file using Vim and committing the changes to a private GitHub repo in the event I spill coffee on my laptop. Piping the output of my notes to Lolcat is a welcome addition to the daily review of my notes. So yeah, what note-taking apps and stuff like that do you lot use?
I do exactly the same thing, except I use Nano because nobody needs to use Vi for that. Jesus. I create a file per month per client and I symlink them. I have like a thing that I can kick off a swap out of the old month and the new month and the symlink that says, worklog.txt. And I just, every day gets a date and the things I did in that day. And the format changes all the time because I change my mind. But it doesn't matter. It's just text. And if I can grep through it looking for stuff, it's good enough.
And what do you do about backing it up then?
Well, it's backed up by Borg to my ZFS drive, which then gets off-sited automatically with Syncoid. So, yeah.
Nice.
I've tried dozens of different ways of organizing this kind of thing over the years. I've used Trello with sort of to-do list and then moved things to done. I've used GitHub issues. I've used a GitHub project. But I always fall back to the same two methods, and that is Post-it notes and a pen and saved drafts in Gmail.
I used to use drafts in Gmail quite a lot, but then Telegram came along and I just started sending myself a shitload of messages and scheduling messages there. And I've got a paper calendar on the wall, which I haven't flipped over yet, which I need to do as soon as we've finished. And I write the month's worth of releases that I need to do, every show's release. And then once it's finished and queued for publishing, I just cross it out on that. I also have my digital calendar on my phone, and that gives me notifications and stuff. And yeah, it's just a nightmare. I'm so disorganized that I've never settled on any sort of note-taking and organization app, I'm afraid. Graham, I get the feeling you've probably tried a million for your writing and stuff.
I have tried a lot of them, and I've tried them seriously as well, not just like give them the go for an hour or so. I mean, for quite a long time, was it Komodo, the 20-minute timer you could set to track your work? I used to do that because it made writing up what I'd done easier. But I do actually have a system that I've used for years that I still keep up, and I think I may have mentioned it before, but it's VimWiki, which is a little bit like an org mode for Vim, and I do use Vim like every day, all the time. And VimWiki is like this mode that you can switch Vim into, that is like a markdown editor, diary, work tracker, but all of the files that it creates within a VimWiki folder that you can publish with a single command to a website. I use it automatically synced to a private Git repository, and I've got it linked to a tasks applet in KDE that uses markdown task lists. And so that applet updates in real time as I update tasks in VimWiki. And it's not perfect, but I can navigate through VimWiki very easily using Vim, my Vim muscle memory. So you can really easily create new files, switch between them, add to ones that you already have. So I have one for like meeting notes, for example. I have another for different things that I'm working on, such as the Documentation Academy. And all of this stuff's just synced to, it's all plain text or markdown, and it's all synced to Git. And I found that as like, it's not specific for any one task or purpose, but it's become a kind of personal wiki.
I think the plain text aspect of it is really important, though, because that makes it much more portable if you want to change to something else.
Yeah, it's actually got nothing to do with Vim, the end format. It's just a load of these files with the links put in by the VimWiki plugin.
So it is just plain text markdown then?
Yeah, it is. It's completely plain text markdown.
I'm liking that with a couple of KDE apps of late. So there's a thing called NanoNote, which I forgot about, which actually sits on my desktop as well, which I'm looking at VimWiki's tasks thing where you have the checkboxes with the X in. It does that as well, which means you can hold down Control and click one of them, and then you can tick a item off. And then the other one is MarkNote, which is, again, it's just a simple text editor which stores everything in folders and markdown files, but it gives you a nice GUI to it when you can look at it yourself, which is quite cool. I like that. I like the way they're switching away from sort of, well, not proprietary formats, but you know what I mean. Because I got burnt by, was it KJots, I think it was called?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, I used to like it. It was built into Contact, and it was a big note-taking thing, but it just got abandoned and eventually turned off, and I had a whole lot of stuff in that I just emptied out into a sort of export format, but it never really got anywhere, and I have that in a folder with _to_do_to_sort, and yeah, I haven't done that yet.
What was that, in some sort of DB then?
Kind of, yeah. It had its own sort of format. I don't know what it was. I can't remember if it was. No, I don't know. Anything I say now would be just a giant lie, but it's not normal text, and it's definitely not like a markdown or anything like that. It was its own sort of thing, or certainly something that when you look at it in a text editor, it looks like gibberish.
Yeah, that's the thing. You want to be able to just open it in a text editor, don't you? Ultimately, and for it to make some sort of sense, at least. As much sense as Markdown can make.
It's the least offensive of a lot of them, though.
Yeah, I don't know.
I am massively lazy, and I still don't know if I use it properly or partially. Was it RST, restructured text, the other one? I think I use a mishmash of the pair of them, and then just my own random shite as well. If it changes colour in Nano, I know I'm doing something right, so it's fine.
Right, well, we'd better get out of here then. We'll be back next week when, who knows at this point. But until then, I've been Joe.
I've been Phelan.
I've been Graham.
And I've been Will.
See you later.